Welcome. This is the second in the blockchain series, and we want to talk in this video about the disruptive opportunities that are available using blockchain. Remember in the last video, we talked a lot about the internet being the major disruptive force of the 20th century, and now here in the 21st century, it's looking like the blockchain technology is going to be the next major disruptive force in business. And it's disruptive because it has elements that are difficult, if not impossible, to accomplish in a single package outside of a blockchain network. For example, a business that has its own data within its own data warehouses or data repositories is always in a possibility of being hacked by outsiders, have that data stolen or corrupted, having their systems compromised. With those possibilities, it creates an extreme amount of overhead in order to protect that data and keep it safe. So what I'd like to do is talk about the benefits to a blockchain network that lead to the possibility that businesses using blockchains can actually conduct business better and be able to lower transaction costs to a level that we've never seen before. The first concept I'd like to talk about is transparency. In a blockchain network, data has end-to-end visibility of all the transactions. Developing a single source of the truth in that respect, transparency to this extent is very difficult in a conventional system because security in a blockchain system can be parsed only to the information that certain network members need, and they have complete visibility over all of that information. Where, let's say you've got two businesses doing transactions between them to create a product and sell it to the one business who integrates it into their next bigger product. In that sort of supply chain scenario, the one business can see their side of the data, the other business sees their side of the data, and they don't necessarily see the end-to-end connection between those two sets of data. Reconciliation and so forth has to occur, but the idea that a blockchain network, people can see the full extent of all the transactions as they flow through the entire network, and it can see all the components, where they came from, where they went, and how they were used. The next thing this leads into then is a concept called immutability, meaning that once a transaction is entered into the blockchain, it can't be deleted or modified by any participant in the network or any person that's trying to hack the network from outside. Each transaction is encoded into a block, it's uniquely signed and time-stamped, and by doing this, it's cryptographically connected one block to the next, and once you've put them into these blocks, you can't hack into it and change it because it would require changing everything about that particular record, and it becomes incredibly difficult to make a change. So at this point, until we start talking about quantum computing, which we'll address in later videos, at this point, a blockchain network totally secures any transaction and keeps it from being changed. The next item I'd like to mention is security. Security in a blockchain creates transactions that are nearly impossible to hack. For one, a blockchain is a distributed ledger, meaning that each node, in other words, each member within the network, has a complete set of all those transactions. And through consensus mechanisms between those network nodes, new transactions are placed into the ledger. Well, if you have 100 participants on the network, and each one of those participants has a complete ledger of all the transactions that have transacted within that particular network, it becomes very, very difficult for any person, friend or foe, to change a transaction in a nefarious sort of way and make it stick, because they'd have to change 100 different ledgers, and they'd have to do it quickly enough that the consensus mechanisms wouldn't find out about it and revert it back to the single version of the truth. So the distributed nature of it creates an incredibly hard security package that can be very difficult to hack or to cause problems within the data. The next thing what I want to talk about is consensus. Now, we talk about those distributed ledger nodes, that everybody in the network has a copy of the entire ledger, and through the software it keeps it all in sync with each other. Well, part of that software syncing process is a consensus mechanism where each of the nodes have to agree that the transaction being entered is an accurate and truthful transaction. These consensus mechanisms enable each of the businesses to make sure that the transaction they put into the ledger stays there and becomes a single version of the truth. So what that does is it creates a business network that is totally democratic. It creates a situation also where businesses who have to normally hire other accountants or outside businesses in order to verify their data and audit the participants in the, let's say, a supply chain that they work with, that completely goes away because everybody has a complete ledger. Everybody has consensus mechanisms that have made sure that their ledger as well as everybody else's is the same, and that all those transactions have been validated before putting them in. You know, businesses right now lose billions of dollars every single year dealing with unfairness in legal, business, and government arenas. So you go to a particular country where they don't have good, strong laws protecting copyright, for example, and so you have other legal mechanisms and other ways that businesses try to protect themselves in showing that they do in fact hold the copyright, or they do in fact hold rights to the particular property, or any one of various business concerns. Those billions of dollars can be saved through a consensus mechanism in a blockchain that allows all businesses in the network to know in an immutable way that all the transactions and all the property owned by the particular members is their, in fact, their property. So part of doing that is a thing called smart contracts, and that's what I want to address next. Is you can think of smart contracts as self-executing electronic contracts that contain all the legal and business terms of an agreement between business partners. So in other words, in simplistic terms, if I was dealing with selling you a product, part of that contract might be that you need to pay in net 30 terms. And so we would expect the payment within 30 days of me shipping the product to you. Also, within that contract might have other terms and conditions, like the fact that you pay the shipping versus I pay the shipping, or it's free on board, which means that once it leaves my shipping dock, it's your property while it's in transit. All of those things that are enabled within a contract become embedded in smart contracts. Smart contracts also become the rules of the road, so to speak, the rules that the network functions and that the participants function between each other. By setting up these smart contracts, you actually enable the transactions to flow back and forth seamlessly without having a high degree of overhead in order to make sure there's compliance and make sure that there's a lack of risk. So it reduces risk and reduces costs associated with that risk. You know, it's mentioned that the International Association for Contract and Commercial Management, or IACCM, that company did a survey, and it says that the average cost of processing and reviewing basic contracts has increased by 38% in the last 6 years. This is a relatively new data point from 2019. It's to $6,900 per contract that is set up. And that's the legal overhead that it takes in order to enable and set in place a contract. And blockchain can literally wipe much of that overhead out. In fact, these benefits, it's estimated by Gartner, will accrue to business by 2030 to the tune of $3.1 trillion. That was with a T. So $3.1 trillion could be saved by businesses that implement blockchain in the next decade. So the potential impact that we've identified affects many industries. And I'd like to list a few. Banking and financial markets are benefited by Bitcoin and Ripple and other technologies to implement the seamless transfer of money across borders and between customers. Trade finance. Trade financing is letters of credit and loans that companies have to get in order to purchase and or transport product before it's actually sold. We talked about digital identity verification in our last video. Insurance. Smart contracts can simplify and secure multi-party transaction. When we talk about complex risk coverage, which relates to insurance, AIG and Standard Chartered insurance companies converted multiple policies into smart contracts, which provided a single consolidated view of the policy data and the documentation in real time. So when they sent out an adjuster, they could actually pull up the account and see all of the attachments, see all of the claims, see all of the transactions that have happened with a particular insurance customer so that they can quickly adjudicate claims and save money in that respect. Group benefits. Everybody has group benefits. In fact, you go to be employed by a company and one of the first questions you ask is, what's the benefits package? Well, benefits packages are a complex network of administrators, providers, employees, and others that manage these benefits. Blockchain can increase the transparency between all those kinds of transactions and all of those parties to reduce errors in a significant way. We've talked about healthcare being benefited, HIPAA laws and so forth being adhered to, and the seamless ability of a person who's part of a blockchain network being able to go to a new doctor and give them permission to see your medical data and seamlessly be able to transfer from one location to another or doctor to another. Incredible benefits there. Patient consent and health data exchange is really what we're talking about in that respect. Clinical trials management, there's great benefit there. Retail and consumer goods with blockchain transactions that are managed in a supply chain through participating members. Commerce, it increases the speed of invoicing and payment processing, removing the friction that causes delays and reduces the complexity and the ambiguity between these kinds of transactions. IBM blockchain has assisted a major consumer good company to reduce its cost by 50% and reduce its processing time from 5 days to 1 in one major implementation. And the list can go on and on. And in fact, you'll see as the list scrolls here that it can handle supply chain, government, asset registration, fraud prevention and compliance, media and entertainment, advertisement, settlement, loyalty programs, automotive programs, mobility, provenance tracking, travel and transportation, personnel coordination, cargo handling. And I'll bet you're getting tired of me just saying the list over and over again, because the list is seemingly endless as to the number of businesses that it can impact and the opportunities that are out there. So as I said earlier, to wrap this up, the disruptive nature of blockchain may have even greater impact than the internet did in the 20th century. It'll be exciting to watch it happen. If you have any questions, please write them in the comments below. I'll try to address those in future videos. And be sure to subscribe. Thank you.